It is Monday, January 26th, 2026.
And for years, we've all heard the same criticism, haven't we?
That European defense manufacturing was asleep at the wheel, just too slow, too small, too fragmented.
Mm,
Well, as of this morning, it seems the sleeping giant has officially woken up.
that's right.
Breaking news out of Berlin confirms Germany has initiated a massive, an unprecedented production surge for IRIS-T and SLS systems, and these are specifically for Ukraine.
We're talking about the end of so-called boutique manufacturing.
Yeah.
This is the start of mass industrialization for air defense.
If you support Ukraine and want to stay ahead of the curve, you should hit that subscribe button for defense reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
This really does feel like a historic day. I mean, looking at the sheer scale of the contracts, the facility openings announced, this isn't just a company update.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's a fundamental shift in the security architecture of the entire continent. Europe is finally putting steel behind its promises.
I'm Alex. Join me with Aria in the latest Deep Dive by Defense report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we are covering the IRIS-T production explosion.
And we really have to stress, we aren't just talking about a modest tick upward in output.
Not at all. We are looking at a factor of 10 increase, a new billion-euro facility in a town called Nonweiler, and a complete strategic pivot.
And we're going to dig into the details that, they usually get buried in the press releases. We need to talk about the ballistic surprise.
The confirmation that the system is doing something it really wasn't advertised to do.
Exactly. Something physics says should be very difficult.
Plus, we have the combat report, a single German unit downing 8 Russian cruise missiles in just 30 seconds. We have to break down how that's even possible.
And then there's the sky shield politics. Why this German system is beating out American and French competitors to become, really, the new NATO standard.
So the mission for this deep dive is simple. We need to understand how Germany's industrial machine has finally adapted to the reality of a long war and what this hardware means for Ukraine's survival right now.
It's all about the transition from prototype to mass production, and why speed has replaced perfection as the new currency of modern warfare.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds. To really understand why today's news is such a shock to the system, we have to look at where things started. Let's rewind the clock to, 2021?
Right, before the full-scale invasion.
Diehl Defense, the manufacturer, was running a completely different operation back then.
Oh, different is putting it mildly. Back then, Diehl was what we in the industry would call a boutique manufacturer.
So high-end, custom work.
Exactly. Incredibly precise equipment, but at an artisanal pace. We're talking about maybe 2 full air defense fire units a year.
2 units a year. That sounds more like building luxury yachts than military hardware.
That's the perfect analogy. It was craftsmanship. It was designed for a peacetime Europe that saw air defense as a niche capability, something for a summit or a specific mission.
Not for high-intensity warfare.
Absolutely not. It was not designed to repel a 100-missile salvo on a Tuesday night.
Which brings us to the reality of January 2026.
Yeah.
The numbers that dropped this morning are just staggering. Can you walk us through that shift?
The announcement confirms Diehl Defense is now targeting the production of 10 full-fire units in 2026 alone.
10?
Yeah.
That's a 500% increase right there.
It is. But the ramp-up doesn't stop there. The goal is to reach 16 systems per year within 24 months.
From 2 to 16.
When you make a jump like that, you're not just working harder. You are fundamentally changing your entire industrial logic.
And this can't just be about optimizing the line, right? You can't just tell workers to screw bolts in faster to get that kind of volume.
No, this is driven by a massive capital injection. We're talking about an investment of over 1 billion euros just to expand the infrastructure.
And the centerpiece of that is the new facility.
It is the new Missile Integration Center in Nonweiler in Saarland.
I've seen the photos. It looks huge.
It's at 400 square meters. But here's why that matters. You can't build missiles in a regular warehouse. You're dealing with high explosives, rocket fuel, sensitive warheads.
The safety standards must be incredible.
Oh, they're incredibly stringent. Blast walls, spacing requirements, specialized fire suppression. Building a facility that can mass-produce explosives is a civil engineering nightmare. The fact they have this online now is a testament to how fast they've moved.
And that puts the human element into perspective, too. A factory like that doesn't run itself.
That's actually been one of the biggest bottlenecks. You need specialized labor. You can't just, pull someone off the street to integrate a seeker head onto a missile.
Right.
The workforce at Diehl has nearly doubled. In 2021, they had about 2,800 employees. As of today, they're crossing the 5,000 employee mark.
Wow.
They are hiring over 500 highly skilled technicians a year just to keep up with the demand from Kyiv.
But here's where I get a bit skeptical. We talk about systems, the trucks, the radars, the command centers. That's great hardware. But a launcher without missiles is just a very expensive truck. We've heard about missile hunger for years. Are the interceptor numbers actually matching this new launcher production?
That is the critical question, isn't it? And for a long time, the answer was no. But the stats released today suggest they've finally cracked that code.
Okay.
Missile production has increased tenfold since 2021.
Tenfold!
And the target now is to churn out 2,000 interceptor missiles per year.
2,000. For context, where were we supposed to be?
Well, the original plan for 2025 was maybe about 800 to 1,000 missiles. So they've effectively doubled their target capacity in a very short window.
That seems essential because from what we see in the daily reports, Ukraine just burns through stock at a rate that would make a peacetime logistician cry.
Exactly. When Russia launches a combined strike, waves of Shahed drones to exhaust the magazines, followed by cruise missiles, you can easily fire 30 or 40 interceptors in a single night.
Just in one region.
Just in one region. So 2,000 a year sounds like a lot, but in this war, it's really the bare minimum required for survival.
So let's talk performance. One of the reasons Germany is doubling down on this specific system is what's happening on the ground. The numbers out of Ukraine are consistently in the 90 to 100% success rate range.
And those numbers hold up.
Yeah.
Western observers on the ground have verified them. And there's a specific engagement that really highlights why the Ukrainians love this thing.
Okay.
A fire unit commander reported that during a saturation strike, his single unit destroyed 8 Russian cruise missiles with 8 interceptors.
So 100% accuracy, that's impressive, but that can happen over the course of an hour or so.
Right. But that's the kicker. They did it in 30 seconds.
Wait, hold on. 8 missiles in 30 seconds. Walk me through the mechanics of that. How does a system even handle that much data?
That's where the TACU combat management system comes in. The radar, the TRML-4D, is tracking hundreds of objects. It identifies the threats, it calculates the trajectory for 8 simultaneous engagements, and feeds all of that to the launchers.
So the operators are basically just authorizing the shots.
They are. But the computer's doing the really heavy lifting. To have 8 interceptors in the air at once, managing their own flight paths so they don't hit each other, and all finding their targets, that is a level of fire control very few systems in the world possess.
That explains why the crew survival rate is so high. If you can clear the sky that fast, you aren't a sitting duck.
Precisely. And we saw this again just recently. The 9th or maybe 10th system delivered to Ukraine arrived, rolled off the trailer, and almost immediately downed 7 cruise missiles and 2 Shahed drones.
Wow.
It's plug and play in the truest sense of the word.
But there's a technical development that's really surprised experts. You called it the ballistic surprise.
Yes, this is the real aha moment for military analysts.
Okay, because I thought IRIS-T was strictly for what we call aerodynamic targets. Cruise missiles, drones, jets, things with wings.
Right.
Ballistic missiles like the Iskander, they fall from space at hypersonic speeds. Don't you need a massive Patriot radar to lock onto those?
That was the conventional wisdom, yes. The IRIS-T uses an infrared seeker, so it looks for heat. Usually, you use radar-guided missiles for ballistics because you need to see through clouds and track pure speed.
So what's the twist?
Here's the physics twist. When a ballistic missile re-enters the atmosphere, it's moving so fast that friction heats up the skin of that missile intensely.
It becomes a glowing hot target.
Exactly. It lights up like a flare in the infrared spectrum. Ambassador Alexei Makiev and combat reports have now confirmed it. The IRIS-T SLM is successfully intercepting short-range ballistic missiles.
So it's not catching them at the top of their arc like a Patriot PAC-3 might.
No, but it's catching them on the way down in the terminal phase.
And why is that distinction so important strategically?
It comes down to economics and scarcity. A Patriot battery costs $1 billion and is incredibly rare. If you have to use it to defend a power plant from a short-range ballistic, that Patriot isn't protecting Kyiv from a Kinzhal.
So if IRIS-T can handle the lower-end ballistic threats, it frees up the Patriots to hunt the big game.
It allows Ukraine to layer their defense much more effectively.
Speaking of layers, we keep throwing around these acronyms, SLS, SLM. Ukraine is getting both, but they aren't the same beast, are they?
No, and the mix is vital. The SLS surface launched short range is your goalie. It's often on a BVS-10 armored vehicle. It uses the standard air-to-air missile with a range of about 12 kilometers.
So that's for the drones and the cheat stuff.
Exactly. The loitering munitions. You do not want to fire $1 million interceptor at a $20,000 Shahed drone. That is how you lose a war financially.
Right.
The SLM medium range, that goes out to 40 kilometers. That's your cruise missile killer.
It sounds like a brutal accounting exercise. You have to match the cost of the defense to the cost of the threat.
It's the only way to sustain a long war. If you're spending 10 times more than the attacker, you eventually run out of money or missiles. The German strategy of mixing SLS and SLM gives Ukraine a way to balance that ledger.
And this success in Ukraine obviously hasn't gone unnoticed. Which brings us to the wider European reaction. Germany isn't just building these for Kyiv anymore.
No, the success in Ukraine has effectively launched the European Sky Shield Initiative, or ESI. Germany is leading a coalition of over 21 nations now to standardize their air defense.
And the buyers list is extensive. Sweden, Denmark, the Baltics. But I found the Bulgaria case particularly interesting. It's about the bang for the buck.
Bulgaria is the perfect case study in defense economics. They had a choice: buy the American Patriot or the German IRIS-T. They went with Germany.
Why?
Because they could get 7 full batteries for $1.4 billion.
And the Patriot option?
A comparable setup would have been nearly $7 billion. For a smaller nation, that's the difference between having a real air defense force and having a single trophy unit you're afraid to use.
Quantity has a quality all its own.
There you go.
But not everyone is thrilled about this German shield. We have to touch on the friction with France.
There is always friction with Paris when it comes to defense procurement. France has been very critical of the Sky Shield. President Macron has argued for years that Europe needs strategic autonomy. He wants Europe to buy European-design, European-built systems.
Specifically the French-Italian SAMP system.
Right. But the problem for France is that the Sky Shield also integrates the U.S. Patriot and the Israeli Arrow 3 for the upper atmosphere.
So France sees this as Germany locking Europe into reliance on American and Israeli tech for decades.
Exactly. They argue that by buying off the shelf now, we are killing the European defense industry of the future.
Which is a valid long-term concern, isn't it? If we stop developing our own high-altitude systems, we lose that engineering muscle.
It is absolutely valid in peacetime. But the counter-argument from Berlin, and especially from the Baltic states, is simple. We are not in peacetime. We have a war on our border.
And the French system isn't ready at scale.
The NOPT is excellent, but production rates are lower, delivery times are longer. Germany's just saying, we need missiles now, not a perfect sovereignty project in 10 years.
Speed wins contracts.
And right now, the German pragmatic approach is definitely winning.
So let's look at the roadmap. Is the current version of IRIS-T the peak? Or is Diehl already looking at what comes next?
Oh, they are moving forward. They are deep into development of the IRIS-T SLX.
The SLX, I assume the X implies more range.
A lot more range.
Yeah.
The SLX is going to double the reach of the current system, up to 80 kilometers in distance and 30 kilometers in altitude.
Okay.
Serial production is expected around 2029. And that puts it into direct competition with the lower tier of the Patriot system.
But if we want to get really futuristic, I keep seeing mentions of something called HYDS.
HYDS, the holy grail. The biggest fear right now is the hypersonic glide vehicle threats that move at Mach 5+ and can change direction. Current systems struggle to predict where they'll be. HYD is a future system designed to intercept these gliders at 100 kilometers out and 50 kilometers up. It's essentially a dedicated hypersonic hunter.
That's the arms race in a nutshell. They build a faster missile, we build a faster shield. But let's bring it back to the ground, to the immediate support for Ukraine. Today's announcement wasn't just about shipping crates of gear. It was about building with Ukraine.
And that is a key shift for 2026. Chancellor Merz and President Zelensky agreed on 11.5 billion euros in support for this year. But the texture of that aid is changing.
It's moving towards localization.
Right. Which just makes sense logistically. If a launcher breaks in Kharkiv, you don't want to ship it all the way back to Munich for repairs.
Sure.
They're setting up repair hubs inside Ukraine and right on the border. But even more interesting are the joint ventures, like Quantum Frontline Industries for drones.
So it's not just charity anymore.
No, it's industrial integration.
Yeah.
Ukrainian combat experience is feeding directly back into German engineering.
Which creates a feedback loop you just can't replicate in a lab.
Exactly. And it embeds Ukraine into the European defense industrial base. It makes the relationship much harder to sever politically because the industries are intertwined.
We've covered a lot of ground from the factory floor in Saarland to the strategic debates in Paris. But as we wrap up, I want to go back to the timeline. We have this massive surge, 16 units a year, thousands of missiles, but the order books are full.
They are. And this is the provocative thought we need to leave you with. The factory lines are moving, and that is good. But the queue is very long.
So if you are Sweden or Estonia,
Hmm.
you might be waiting until 2029 for your full delivery.
Right. But Ukraine is fighting for its life today.
The conflict is between long-term rearmament for Europe and immediate survival for Ukraine.
Precisely. If European production is booked out until 2030, how does Europe balance stocking its own shelves against keeping Kyiv in the fight? Every missile sent to a warehouse in Bavaria to deter a future war is one less missile protecting a power plant in Kharkiv right now,
And Russia's ramping up too.
with help from North Korea and Iran. The factory lines are moving, but the question remains, can they outpace the attrition of a modern industrial war?
That is the strategic dilemma of 2026, a race between the assembly line and the front line.
And for the people on the ground, second place just isn't an option.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.